Welcome to the Ravensvale Coven. The Coven features short, independent stories with themes ranging from dark horror and fantasy to any other disturbing fiction. The Coven contains stories written outside the ongoing storyline of the Ravensvale universe. The stories are submitted by listeners, authors, and storytellers and are carefully curated by the staff of Ravensvale. To learn about our guidelines for submitting your story for consideration, go to www.ravensvale.com and click on the Submission tab on the menu bar.
The Ravensvale Coven is part of our dark fantasy horror anthology podcast and may contain explicit language or thematic elements not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
The story you are about to hear was performed during Appalachian Horror Fest 2024, an event produced by Small Raven Media and held at Central Cinema in Knoxville, Tennessee. This performance features Vanished, an original story written and performed by the talented Tiffany Weathers. As you listen, allow yourself to be carried away into a realm where the line between reality and the supernatural fades away.
Hello again, family. All right, so this is called Invisible. This is me. In the heart of Tennessee, where shadows drape the streets like a heavy cloak, secrets whisper through the twisted branches of ancient oaks as the towering mountains and trees cast long shadows on the buildings below. There lived a woman named Emily. Hollowbrook was a place where the mundane mingled with the mystical, if you will, where reality and nightmare danced on the edge of perception. She lived there all her life. She grew up there, and actually in this very valley. With her mousy brown hair and soft-spoken demeanor, she blended seamlessly into the background, unnoticed and easily forgotten. She never had friends and never dated anyone in her entire lifetime. Even her parents barely noticed, past their favorite son, her younger brother, Robbie. Graduated high school, went to college. She should have had the whole college experience, but no one ever seemed to notice or care there either. She moved through the town day after day with the quiet resignation of a ghost, her presence unnoticed somehow amidst the hundreds of people who hurried past her without a second glance. From the moment she stepped out of her apartment each morning, Emily felt as though she were invisible, a phantom drifting through the lives of others. Her days were spent in the suffocating boredom of a bland office building where she toiled away at her desk in solitude. Her coworkers barely spared her a passing glance, their conversations and laughter echoing through the halls, sterile halls like distant whispers that never quite reached her ears. Emily's attempts at forging connections were met with polite but distant responses, or worse, unnoticed at all, leaving her feeling increasingly isolated in a sea of faces that never seemed to see hers. Her family treated her no better. She became so depressed that her brother married his best friend, and they adopted two wonderful kids together, and Emily had never met them. The little bastards called her Ghost Aunt. What the fuck? As weeks turned into months, Emily's sense of invisibility worsened, seeping into every fiber of her until she felt like little more than a shadow of her former self. She found herself fading into the background of mirrors, her reflection growing fainter each passing day. It was as though the very essence of her existence were slowly being erased, leaving behind nothing but a shallow shell of a woman she once was. Feeling of invisibility was inevitably creating a truly ghostly monster out of the woman in front of you. Imagine feeling so invisible in life that you fade away like a ghost, and the people around you never notice. They never even mourn. You were just never there. Emily's life took a sinister turn one fateful night when a haunting dream invaded her sleep. In the depths of the night, as the moon hung low in the sky, a thick fog rolled in from the surrounding woods. She found herself imprisoned in the darkness of her mind. A shadowy figure materialized, its form shifting and dancing like smoke in the wind. It whispered to her in a voice that chilled her to the bone, promising her power beyond imagination, but at a terrible cost. Amidst the suffocating cloak of anonymity, and the fear for the unseen, I couldn't say that word, sorry. A seed of darkness began to take root in Emily. It whispered to her in the dead of night, filling her mind with thoughts of revenge and retribution, leading her to imagine things in such graphic detail, even you would shudder. If no one could see her, did she truly exist? The question gnawed at her. It festered like a wound, driving her to the brink of madness as she grappled with what was left of her own reality, constantly hearing the echo of the evil voice in her head, telling her of the power she could have. When Emily awoke, her heart pounding in her chest, she found herself bathed in a cold sweat, the remnants of the dream clinging to her like cobwebs. The room was shrouded in darkness, the moonlight filtering through the curtains, casting eerie shadows across the walls. It was then that she felt it, a presence, a real presence, lurking in the shadows, unseen, but undeniably there. The specter from her dream had followed her into the waking world, attached to her like glue. As Emily walked the deserted streets on her way home from work, the darkness around her spoke as if it held the souls of 1,000 broken children. It whispered, again, promises of power, of freedom, of the chains of invisibility that bound her to the shadows. People would know her. They would finally see her. And as she stood on the precipice of her own unraveling sanity, Emily made a choice that would change the course of her fate forever. Her first victim was Mr. Abernathy, the grumpy old postman who had always treated her with disdain when he acknowledged her at all. She followed him home one evening, her footsteps silent on the damp pavement. Through the fogged windows of his cottage, she watched as he sat alone at his kitchen table, a small broken lamp casting long, twisted shadows across the walls. And when he turned away, unaware of the danger lurking outside, she slipped inside with the ease of a ghost. The blade of the kitchen knife felt cold and heavy in her hand as she approached him from behind. Her heart was pounding in her chest. With a swift and silent motion, she slit his throat from ear to ear, his life spilling out onto the floor in a dark crimson pool of blood. She watched with a mix of horror and fascination as the life drained from his wide, horrified eyes, leaving behind nothing but a vacant stare and the smell of urine as his body relaxed and his pupils dilated. In that moment, as she watched the light fade from his eyes, Emily felt a rush of exhilaration unlike anything she had ever experienced before. The bustling town continued on its relentless, fast pace, oblivious to the darkness that lurked there. And as Emily stood over the lifeless body of her first victim, a twisted sense of euphoria surged through her veins, intoxicating her with the heady rush of newfound power. She danced into the night, seductively licking death from her bloodied fingertips. As days turned into weeks, Emily grappled with the newfound power that had been bestowed upon her. She discovered that she could slip through crowds unnoticed, her movements as silent as a whisper in the wind. She watched from the shadows as the townspeople went about their daily lives, their secrets laid bare before her like an open book. So with each passing day, Emily's descent into madness grew. She moved through the city like a specter, her footsteps silent against the pavement as she plotted her next move. Each victim was chosen for one reason or another, each death serving as a twisted form of retribution for the years of neglect that she had endured. She was always, and will always, be invisible, she realized. The least she could do is have her revenge before she vanished into absolute nothingness. But as Emily's body count grew, so too did the weight of her own guilt. She was a good girl. Before this, she would have never hurt a fly. Literally. She found herself haunted by the faces of those she had killed, their accusing stares piercing through her weakened sanity. It seemed to be the only time they actually saw her, not through her, their eyes wide and full of fear. And yet, even in the depths of her despair, she could not deny the exhilarating rush that came with each act of violence. Emily soon learned that her newfound invisibility came at a terrible price. The specter demanded payment in blood, whispering dark promises of vengeance and power in her ear, threatening to leave her in desolation. And so, driven by a hunger she could not ignore, Emily continued, a silent predator stalking the forgotten corners of Hollowbrook under the cover of darkness. It was as though she existed in a realm of her own making, a shadowy underworld where the laws of reality held no gravity. As dawn broke over the city, Emily stood amidst the carnage she had wrought, her hands stained crimson, ready to do it all over again. As the days turned into weeks, Emily's reign of terror continued unabated. It was as if one day something changed and the city suddenly became gripped by fear. Whispers of the invisible killer spreading like wildfire through the streets. Yet, despite the mounting body count, the authorities remained baffled, unable to comprehend how a murderer could operate in plain sight. Emily reluctantly reveled in the newfound notoriety. And even if they didn't know her name, the fear and chaos she unleashed fed the darkness within her like fuel to a flame. She moved through the city with a sense of twisted purpose, her every step a testament to the power she had held over those who once overlooked her. They were going to see her now. And amidst the glorious chaos, a glimmer of doubt continued to flicker within Emily's fractured mind. She found herself constantly plagued by visions of her victims, their faces twisted in agony as they begged her to spare them. And as the weight of her sins threatened to crush her beneath their unbearable burden, Emily's grip on reality began to slip even further. Her descent into darkness grew ever deeper. The specter demanded more blood, more sacrifice, its whispers echoing the darkest recesses of her mind. And so she continued her reign of terror, preying on the unsuspecting denizens of Hollowbrook with ruthless efficiency. One night, as she wandered the deserted streets in search of her next victim, Emily's fractured psyche finally reached its breaking point. The shadows that had once whispered sweet promises of power now coiled around her like a cold snake, their frosty embrace suffocating her with the weight of her own guilt. She tried to shake it all away, but the images penetrated the darkness behind her closed eyes. And in a moment of despair, Emily's mind had shattered like glass into a million jagged pieces that scattered into the wind. She collapsed to her knees amidst the ruins of her own sanity, her screams echoing through the empty streets like a symphony of madness. And so it was that one moonless night. Emily found herself standing atop the town's ancient clock tower, the wind whipping through her hair and the darkness pressing in around her. From that vantage point, she could see the entirety of Hollowbrook spread out below her, a tapestry of shadows and secrets, each one a testament to her own descent into madness. With a cry of anguish, Emily hurled herself from the tower, her body plummeting toward the unforgiving earth below. But instead of meeting her end, she found herself suspended in midair, enveloped by the same darkness that had once been her undoing. In a moment of clarity amidst the chaos, she realized the terrible truth. The darkness that she had embraced, had been using her as a pawn in its own twisted game of manipulation and deceit. In that moment, she realized the specter that had promised her power and vengeance had been using her all along, a puppet dancing on the strings of its own malevolent will. From that day forth, Hollowbrook was haunted by the legend of the ghost of Hollowbrook, a vengeful spirit that stalked the streets in search of its next victim. The townspeople whispered of its icy breath and malevolent laughter, of the unseen terror that lurked in the shadows. Emily became a wraith, a creature of darkness and despair, forever bound to the town that had once been her home. So if you ever find yourself wandering the streets of Hollowbrook on a moonless night, beware of the shadows that cling to the cobblestone, for you never know the unseen horrors that may be lurking just out of sight. And remember, sometimes the greatest terrors are those that dwell within the darkest corners of your own minds.
If you enjoyed this story, you're in for a spine-tingling treat at Appalachian Horror Fest 2025, scheduled for Saturday, October 11th, 2025. This event promises to be a day-long, immersive experience that will transport you into the heart of Appalachian horror and to the rich legacy of storytelling. Imagine stepping into a world where the chilling tradition of Appalachian folklore comes to life. Our event will feature captivating live musical performances, thrilling shows that will keep you on the edge of your seat, and an array of vendors offering unique and spooky merchandise. Don't miss the numerous photo ops throughout the event, perfect for capturing memories with friends and family against haunting backdrops. The highlight of the night will be our grand storytelling show, where the Master Storytellers will weave tales that send shivers down your spine and ignite your imagination. Appalachian Horror Fest is actively recruiting storytellers, musicians, volunteers, vendors, and sponsors to help make the festival an unforgettable experience. For more information or to get involved, visit our website at www.appalachianhorrorfest.com. Join us in making Appalachian Horror Fest 2025 the best yet. Ravensvale Coven is a production of Small Raven Media. Audio engineering and sound design by Nick Devan at Nicky D Sound. Copyrighted 2023 by Small Raven Media. All rights reserved.